Good morning, Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Good morning. Good morning, Sota.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome and thank you for joining the opening ceremony of the first International Conference on Small Islands Community 2020. And you are also invited to witness the event through our live YouTube channel and also via Zoom meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to extend my warm welcome to all the participants of the first International Conference on Small Islands Community 2020. This international conference is organized by Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science, PATTIMURA University. This conference will be held in one day, presented by prominent national and international speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, to comment the webinar, we kindly invite you to listen to the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite everyone to invoke your Almighty to respect the religions and beliefs. Praying is begun. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to have a chairman of the committee to deliver a report of the event. Dr. Yolanda Apituli, the time is yours, please.
Thank you, Idonia. Your Honorable Dr. Lucky Adrianto, Master of Science, Dean of Fisheries and Marine Science, Bogor Agricultural University, who is the keynote speaker in the conference. Professor Dr. M.J. Sateno, Rector of PATTIMURA University, Professor Dr. Freddy Lewakabesi, the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs of PATTIMURA University, who is also acting as the Dean of Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science, our distinguished invited speakers, Dr. Sophie Weber from the University of Sydney, Professor Dr. Sota Yamamoto, and Dr. Da Jeong Song from Kagoshima University, Professor Dr. Prachanat from Buriram Rajabat University, Thailand, Mr. Alexo Leonito Amaral, Master of Science from National University of Timor-Leste, Timor-Leste, and Professor Dr. Hermin Soselisa from PATTIMURA University, Indonesia. The honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, and good morning and good day for our fellow invited speakers. What a great privilege to have you all here in this first international conference on small island community, conducted under the theme Momentum of Transformation of Small Island Community in New Normal Era. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend to you all a very warmest welcome and to thank you all who have accepted our invitation to this conference. I would also like to thank the Rector of PATTIMURA University, Professor Dr. M.J. Sapteno and Professor Dr. Freddy Lewakabesi, who is acting as the Dean of Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science, who funded this event, and all other persons supported this event directly and indirectly. Ladies and gentlemen, this event is attended by participants and presenters that mostly come from Maluku. However, there are some come from outside Maluku, such as East Java, Kalimantan, Central Sulawesi, Southeast Sulawesi, and North Maluku, and comprised of researchers, lecturers, students, government organization, and research agency. The parallel session will be run in 4 topics, namely marine natural resources of small island, fisheries processing technology, socio-economic properties of small island community, and sustainable mariculture in small island. I would like to thank all the organizing committees and the students who have worked enormously hard to enable this conference to happen. Finally, as a chairperson of this conference, I hope that you all will have a great opportunity to share the scientific information on small island community. Thank you. Idonia.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to invite the Rector of PATTIMURA University, Professor Dr. Martinus J. Sapteno SHM, to deliver his welcoming remarks and officially open this conference. Prof. Sapteno, the time is yours.
Thank you, Idonia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Your Honorable Dr. Engineer Lucky Adrianto MSc from Bogor Agricultural University, our distinguished invite speaker, Dr. Sophie Weber from School of Geoscience, the University of Sydney, Australia, Professor Dr. Sota Yamamoto, and Dr. Da Jeong Song from International Center for Islands Study, Kagoshima University, Japan, Professor Dr. N. Prachanat, Buriram Rajabat University, Thailand, Alexio Leonito Amaral, University of Timor-Leste, Professor Dr. Hermin L. Soselisa from PATTIMURA University. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, what a great pleasure to have you all here in this virtual First International Conference on a small island community. In this opportunity, I would like to extend to you all a very warm welcome on behalf of PATTIMURA University, and to say how grateful we are to have you all who have accepted our invitation to this conference. PATTIMURA University is the biggest and the oldest government university in Maluku. We have 9 faculty and postgraduate school, research and community service institute, and Equality Assurance Institute. PATTIMURA University has 23,000 students, majority from Maluku and also from different parts of Indonesia. The PATTIMURA University has always focused on maritime and marine science. We have firmly believed from the very beginning that strong scientific and technical knowledge are required for the sustainable utilization and management of incredible biodiversity resources that we have in the Eastern Indonesia and particularly in Maluku. PATTIMURA University is also working hard to committed to shaping to a good reputation and research and education, recognized not only nationally but also internationally. This conference plays one of an important role in achieving our goals. Our honorable distinguished speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia is an archipelago country, and Maluku is well known as a province of 1,000 islands. It is very important to preserve its natural resources to support the life of community who live in those small islands. We have witnessed many resources and environmental degradation occur in the world with the excuse of human needs. The conference like this provide a valuable opportunity for researchers, scientists, industry specialists, and decision makers to share their experience and expertise that will produce a basis for eco-friendly utilization of the natural resources around the islands. This goal only can be reached through integrative and collaborative ways. Through this international conference, we can also strengthen our collaboration in doing research. We can exchange knowledge for better in managing the natural resources on the small islands. I am grateful to experts who will share their knowledge today. As a keynote speaker, invite speaker and presenters. I also welcome all the presenters and participants from other universities, the representative of government and NGOs who have joined this conference today. I also want to thank the organizing committee that has been working hard to enable the conference to happen today. I'm sure you will have a fruitful discussion and rewarding exchange of knowledge today, and I look forward to learning about the outcome. With this, I officially open this conference and hope you all enjoy the conference and success. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Indonesia has thousands of islands stretching from Sabang to Merauke. Most of them are small islands that have their own character and uniqueness, both in their communities and their ecosystems. Even though small islands have many potentials, many problems still need to be fixed. Economic difficulties and community welfare, natural resources exploitation and management due to the population growth, or even worse, climate crisis. Humans are using more resources than the earth can replenish each year, leading to deforestation, degraded soils, polluted air and water, and dramatic declines in numbers of fish and other species. The problem is also getting worse as population and consumption keep growing faster than technology finds new ways of expanding what can be produced from the natural world. We are in the middle of a crisis. We are sinking. And it is not due to just the sea level rise and climate change, but also the pandemic now. Nowadays, coronavirus is changing the world in unprecedented ways. It has been almost a year that Indonesia has been grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic problem that is endemic globally and disrupting the nation's economy and even the world. What about small island communities? Amid large-scale restrictions that force people to remain silent and cannot do many things, COVID-19 has impacted tourism and trade in natural resources on which they rely and must also be affected. Society must race against time to survive. Local natural resources are targeted for use but cannot be optimized to improve their welfare. Although not being able to maximize it, the new normal era has now begun. Each part must respond and face this. The condition has not yet recovered, but humans and nature must choose to remain silent or start moving again. Both pandemic and climate change phenomena have significantly impacted small island communities, both humans and their ecosystems. The International Conference of Small Islands Community with the theme Momentum of the Transformation of Small Islands Community in New Normal Era is held to answer challenges, adaptation, and readiness of small islands communities to face these two significant phenomena. Together, by sharing, we hope that the management of small islands and their natural resources in a sustainable manner in the middle of the new normal era can conceptualize and create prosperous small island community.
Dia punya mic kecil.
That was the video showing the importance of small islands community and the problem that really needs to be fixed. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have to come to the end of the opening ceremony of the first International Conference on Small Islands Community 2020. In this conference, we are going to have 3 sessions. The first one is keynote speaker session, the second is plenary session, and the last one is parallel session. Now, we are going to start with the keynote speaker session, and this session will be led by a moderator, Dr. Ingenieur John Tetelepta MPhil. Dr. John, the time is yours.
Thank you, Adunia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to our next session. In this session, we will have a keynote speaker, our Honorable Lucky Adrianto, PhD, MSc from Bogor University. Welcome, Pak Lucky. Before we start the session, I would like to read a short curriculum vitae of Lucky Adrianto, MSc, PhD. Lucky Adrianto got his Bachelor in Fisheries Resources Economics, Department of Fisheries Socioeconomic, Faculty of Fishery and Marine Science, Bogor Agriculture University, and 1992. His master degree in Fisheries Economic and Policy, Department of Marine Social Science, Graduate School of Fisheries, Kagoshima University, Japan, and 2001, and then PhD in Marine Policy, Department of Marine Production and Environmental Study, United Graduate School of Agriculture and Fishery Science, Kagoshima University, and 2004. Currently, Dr. Lucky Adrianto, MSc, is the Dean of Faculty of Fishery and Marine Science, EPBA University, 2015 and 2020. Is going to finish shortly. And also Advisory Board, Center of Coastal and Marine Resources Study, IPB University, 2015 up to the present time. International Academic Board, Coastal and Ocean Management Institute, Shanghai University, 2015 to 2021. Area of interest in social ecological system of the ocean, fisheries governance and management, coastal and marine resources management, socioeconomic of fisheries, coastal and marine resources. He has more than 89 articles, international and national journals, 6 books, either as editor, book chapter, etc. More than 10 popular articles in newspaper, magazine, etc. Few to mention here. In 2020, Yati L. Adrianto, M. Christianti W. Pranowo, Magnitude and Tourist Perception of Marine Debris and Small Tourist Island, Assessment of Tidung Island, Jakarta, Indonesia, published in Marine Pollution Bulletin. L. Adrianto, D. Apriliani, Sihotang, and Nurul Khoma, Preliminary Uncertainty Analysis and Fisheries, the Case of 2 Fisheries in Indonesia, IOP Conference Series, 2020. One more. Adrian Damora L. Adrianto, Wardianto, Suman, Dynamic Spatial Allocation of Scallop Seafood Lobster, Panodilus omarus, and the coast of Gunung Kidul, Indonesia. Many articles as well to mention here, but I just read some of it. Pak Lucky will lead the keynote presentation. Before the presentation, I just want to informed that Pak Luki will have 30 minutes for presentation, and then by the end of the presentation, 20 minutes for discussion. Everybody if want to ask can write down their question, which will be distributed in the link, and you can write your question either in Indonesia or in English, and at the end, I will read out the question to Pak Luki. Thank you very much. Pak Luki, time is yours.
Thank you, Pak John.
You're welcome.
Before I start with my contribution, some of ideas on the small island governance, I would like to ask the host, can you stop the share, and I will share by myself because there is some modification still. Yeah, thank you. I will share my own through my laptop, and so that we can a bit speedy instead of just asking somebody to do next or something.
Next.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I would like to express my grateful thanks and highly appreciation to all of the faculty members of Fisheries and Marine Science, University of Pattimura, and also the rectors of the Pattimura University for inviting me to contribute in this very strategic and timely conference, so-called International Small Islands Community Conference. And I think this is a bit strategic in time because I believe that the problems of the small island in our country, as we understood that Indonesia has been announced as the largest archipelagic state, and all of the mostly geographical features of Indonesia is small islands. So I think this conference will be or become very strategic, not only for Pattimura University, but also for Indonesian as general. Pak John and Ibu Yolanda, the chairwoman of this conference, all of the invited speakers, distinguished participants, I would like to share and maybe provoking some new questions of the governability. So I think my sharing will be not like teaching, but maybe starting with some of discussion within the next maybe 20 or 25 minutes. So my question is actually, how's the governability of the small islands, especially the socio-ecological system, in the new normal area? So I have a bit 2 or 3 questions. One, well, SES is one of the approach of the connectivities between human and natural system. I will discuss that one in the beginning. But then I will also would like to start with the question of what is definition of new normal era? What is that? When? And what actually the characteristic of the new so-called new normal era? And then the second question will be discussed all of you with all of you is that governability, after we understand that the problem of the challenge and threats of the small islands can, in my word, can broken the socio-ecological system of the island, and how's the governability of that? So that actually the things that I would like to share the question as well as the discussion on these issues through this contribution on the keynote session. I would like to start I'm happy to say that this is actually island spares rather than just only using the small islands, because the spares is more connected between the human, land, and aquatic system. An island will be very understood that the small of land or piece of land or form of land that's surrounded by the waters, but then human is very, very integral part of this ecosystem. So this pairs with the 3 component is connected strongly and stronger compared to the other features like coastal zone or other terrestrial ecosystem. So small island is different features to my best opinion. Secondly, before we start with the conceptual framework of STAIRs, I would like to also remind you that the small island is connected with these SDGs. Even though that in the context of this almost 1 year pandemic, we still have some question on the target of the SDGs. Is that still relevant? The target of SDG that we have 10 target from the healthy ocean to the wealthy ocean. And within this framework, the small island economy is part of the target, especially the target of 14.7, for example. But small island itself is connected from the 14.1 to 14.C. We can understand that international diplomacy also well contributed by the island, because without the outermost of island, for example, we don't have any such calling of archipelagic state, because we have outermost island that we call as the archipelagic state. So there's a two interlude that I would like to start with the important and strategic of the islands, especially for Indonesia. Next, I would like to share my ideas why I'm very interested with this framework of so-called socio-ecological system. Social system is actually ecosystem. It is ecosystem, but within that ecosystem connected with the social system. So this is like a rational theory of the ecosystem. In the past, we understood that human is external part. It's not part of the ecosystem, but we should understand that human is part of the ecosystem. And specifically for the island, is very, very different with the context of other coastal zone. In some islands, including Maluku, including Indonesia, and also when I was in Japan, I studied also with Professor Yamamoto, placed in the International Islands Center. In the past, when I was there, the name of that center is the Small Island Study Center under the something like research center. And they have like umijin, meaning that islands communities different with others communities in the coastal zone, meaning that for the context of small island, socio-ecological system is very strongly applicable in my thinking. The second one, using the socio-ecological system as the framework of small island, I would like to also start with this interaction as the keywords of this island. Using the SAIRS as the framework, applicable framework for the small island governance, I would like to share also that interaction is very important. Interaction between a resource unit, resource system, governance system, and users. And today, conference, we talk about the community is integral part of this interaction. Using this, the second framework, I would like to also start with this ecosystem services of the island. Why we should govern the island in the context of SAIS? Because using the SAIS approach, ecosystem services is the keyword of the structure and function of the ecosystem. Small island, giving the some services as supporting, provisioning, regulating, as well as cultural. Tourism, spiritual, educational is part of that island. But then they have also service to the human. And who's the human? Community of the island. Community of the island should have some security, basic material for food, healthy condition, and also good social relationship. And we understand that actually for the island, as I mentioned previously, we are the islanders. We are not mainlanders, something like that, as in other small island country like Japan, for example, strongly sometimes still mentioned. The way that good social relationship in this community is very important in the context of we call human well-being. And then in that context, small island governance is very important using this ecosystem services governance. In that regards, then the last part of this framework that I would like to share is that ecosystem service governance. And start with this ecosystem service governance. Then we go to the context of problem that already mentioned by the by Indonesia, for example, the context of the new normal, the problems of island with the pandemic. The video also mentioned that one. Start with some of the issues on that. This one, my question, first question, what is the new normal era? As video showing in the video in the beginning of this keynote session, actually before pandemic, small island has a problem, right? Small island has some anthropogenic problems within the context of, say, that managing the island in the past, like become same with the managing other coastal system, which is, in my opinion, is totally different. Managing coastal mainland, and even though in the theory, all of the small island is coastal zone, but managing small island is different with the managing, say, coastal mainland. Even managing the big islands and the small island is different. Managing the oceanic islands and the continental island, for example, there are two categories of island, for example, it's also different. In that regards, before we go to the context of pandemic, the anthropogenic or the failures of the governance is also the challenge. I call spectrum 1. But then the issues of climate change come up, right? The issues of climate change, the sea level rise, there is some sinking island in Seribu Island, for example, or sinking island in some of the area of our countries. Come to the spectrum 2, climate change. Even though that some of the people say that climate change is also connected with anthropogenic, but the objects of the climate change is actually natural system. And then go to the context of pandemic, which is the context of community, human system, because the pandemics attack the community, the people. Climate change attack the natural system, even though that the reason of the climate change is anthropogenic. Some of experts say of that. So there are 3 new normal area. Is that already new normal when we have an anthropogenic, or we have a good policy of the new normal after the climate change? And how is the pandemic? So we have like triple challenge of the small island: anthropogenic, climate change, and pandemic. So this is the thing that I would like to raise the question of the what is the new normal era, something like that. Okay, let's do the context of CES and the new normal era, and I call broken CES. As we understand that, as I mentioned, that the small island pairs have ecosystem and socioeconomic system as integral part. Climate change attack the ecosystem, and then will influence or making some problem with the marine ecosystem function, and then making some influence effects on the marine resource supply. And that's why the surface flow will be broken because of the climate change. But then after we have a pandemic, there's also broken of the demand. We understand that the number of the market closed because of this pandemic. That's why that the demand is also a problem. So there are 2, supply and demand, breaking the supply and demand problems in the context of this island. So this is the thing that I would like to share with all of you regarding to this problem. For fisheries, for example, this is the systematic thinking that I just want to share for the islands, especially with the climate in the context of ecosystem, and then with pandemic in the context of the communities or human system. There is some break or broken system here. So I think the new normal should start from the context of climate, and then how then connected with the pandemic, and how's the governability after that. That's what that I will discuss with you the last session of my last part of my keynote speech today on the context of question governability. But this is the framework that I would like to share, especially for the context of fisheries, for example. Or small island community in the context of this case. So even though that the small, in this community of the fisheries, for example, there are two things: the small island community as the producers, and then the market community in the other hand. So there is some broken system from the fisheries input, process, output, and then market, and then also will theoretically will affect the sustainability and resilience of this island. Based on this framework of, especially this framework, the small island spares and we got broken supply and demand of the custom services, I would like to share some ideas. In Gili Matra, for example, there is a problem of coral area changes because of the anthropogenics and climate change. There is also changes of the water quality, for example, in the context of 1972 to 2013. For the context of Tidung Island, for example, there is also impact on marine cultural services of tourism. And also anthropogenic problem with the context of, say, tourism exit the carrying capacities, but now because of pandemic, then there is no or less tourists anymore. There's also increased the unsustainability in the context of the before pandemic, but then a bit increased to the potentially sustainable after the pandemic. This is the some trade-off of this context of sustainability of the marine cultural services or tourism. The Slayer Island, the small-scale fisheries, for example, there is some simulation of the resilience of the coral reef, and then connected with the small island community of the income. So this is the things that in the island, small island spares, very, very vulnerable in the context of climate change and also anthropogenic, and will be also a bit some trade-off after the pandemic attack this system. By using some this three what's that example of the how the island is very vulnerable in the context of anthropogenic, climate change, and pandemic, I would like to share the governability. What is actually the governability? I propose using more, not using conventional governance mechanism or definition. Instead, I'm using the what we call interactive governance of the island. So the keyword is interaction, as I mentioned before in the SES framework. The interactive governance is the whole interaction taken to solve of the societal small island problem, including the ecosystem and human system, to create social opportunities. This is the thing. So pandemic is challenge or threat, but maybe we should create the opportunity. So shifting or maybe transforming from threat to the opportunities. So this is what we call interactive governance in my perspective of the island's governance. In that regards, natural system and human system governance common features should have some more stronger interaction between society and between private and public, and between basis on the societal problem solution. In that regards, I would like to use this as the framework of the governability in the new normal era regarding to the contact institution. And then island spare, we understand that one, and principle of the new what we call interactive governance. I'm using this as the tool to propose the new interactive governance for the new for the small island, especially in the context of the new normal era, not only for the pandemic but also start from the anthropogenic climate change and pandemic. So governing interaction is one thing. From self, hierarchical, and co-governance. So this is the thing that I would like to mention, the co-governance. In that regard, governing system is clear, small island. System to be governed is clear, is actually, governing system is clear regarding to the state. We are part of the archipelagic state. System to be governed, clear, we are small islands governance. But then the things that we can transform or change or maybe modify is the governing interaction. And all of the three, governing system, system to be governed, and governing interaction, is the key parameters of governability, which is actually defined as the overall capacity of the governance of any societal entity or system, including small island. So in this regard, I would like to a bit propose what we call the governing interaction spectrum. From usually in our regime now, sorry, maybe I'm wrong, but when we have island as the district or city, but then disconnecting between the other island, because we just focus on one island as one entity of administrative. Say, for example, district of Tual or city of Ambon, because Ambon is actually island, right? Even though that there is some what we call provincial under the island provincial. And also in Bangka Belitung, for example, they have a provincial Bangka Belitung, but they just only focus on Bangka and Belitung. In that regard, that I call spectrum one. There is less interaction because we just only administrative and political, quote unquote, political governance. Not or less, I'm saying not, maybe wrong, maybe less interaction between the ecosystem and human. In this regard, I put in the context of what we call small island interaction and networks, governance. Really the provincial as the governance, meaning that we also connect the all of the island as ecosystem networks, not just only administrative networks. So I propose actually, or maybe questioning the association of these island provinces, is that administrative networks or ecosystem networks, or SES network at least. In that regard, we go to the spectrum too, that it's not just only putting one island as administrative, but instead, yeah, connecting between the island within the area of, say, WPP 718, for example, or in the context of Alexio under the Arafura and Timor Sea, for example. So this is the things that I think a bit. I'm not saying that my ideas is really true, but at least we have to have a question. Is that the governance of the island is administrative, political governance, or SES governance? Because under the SES governance, we have to combining between ecosystem governance and human perspective governance, including political governance. But this is still under question in our, because what? Using the concept of resiliencies, I believe that the pandemic or climate change vulnerabilities can be reduced, the impact of that can be reduced by strengthening the social capital, strengthening the ecosystem network, strengthening the economic networks in the context of this new normal era. So I think this is the question. I propose that is a question. It's not the answer yet, because we discussed in the context of, say, knowledge sharing as Director today's mention of knowledge sharing of this conference. By saying that, I would like to close my session with the context of pandemic or new normal area with this context of when, well, the short terms will be mitigating the shocks, yes. But we should have then go to the managing uncertainty by securing ecosystem integrity, promoting digital ecosystem to have networks of the economy of the small island as the governing the networks, not just only, as I mentioned, political governance. And then go to the last ultimate, what we call transformation, we call adaptive session or adaptive stage, which mention of the context of the regional-based economy, aquatic biodiversity economy, especially with the context of the marine resources. Pandemic is we understand that still have question in the context of vaccine, but we understood that to strengthen our immune, we should have more superfood from the marine. So small island can behave like producing the marine superfood for the context of the pandemic. So that's what we call transformative. If you just only business as usual, only just mitigating the shock, then just only like that. But when we contact just only managing the uncertainty, that only recovery. But when we have to move up to the context of transforming the economy, then we could have like digital, marine regional economy, and biodiversity economy, marine superfood, for example, as the context of potential regional economy in the context of small island. I think that's things that maybe again, Pak John and others participants, distinguished invited speakers, question. I just would like to share the question and some point of discussion. Maybe after this we can have some plenary session with other prominent scientists and invited speakers from Japan, from Timor-Leste, from Thailand, and from Sydney for Indonesia as well. In the context of this two questions, the new normal era and the governability of the small island, especially in the context of tropical spheres like Indonesia. I close this with the quote, even though that Barbara said this is not only just, not merely or focused on small island as the small island that I understand, but this is very, very sweet with us. Barbara mentioned that small island of coherence in the sea of chaos can shift the whole system to a higher order, meaning that there are two keywords. Coherence is relationship, interaction, and then small island is small ideas of the coherence can shift the whole system. Also for the context of Indonesia, when we lose our small island governance, then we lose the archipelagic state regime that we have understood. Because archipelagic state is different with coastal state. When we lost the small island governance, then we lost the entity of the Indonesian as the archipelagic state. So be careful with the small island, I think. Thank you very much, Pak John and other participants. I'd like to again, on behalf of the IPB universities and myself, thank you very much for inviting me. And as Pak John mentioned, my deanship will be ends this month and start from New Year with a new passion and a new spirit, even though that uncertainty is still there under the pandemic, but we should have more spirit to adapt with the new normal era, with new spirit. And I will go to more deeper in the context of this small island. I will back to my colleagues in Kagoshima. I was alumni of the Small Island Center in Kagoshima. I did my PhD dissertation on Yoron Island, which is very small island, and I think I will be very missing island of Japan in the future. Thank you, Pak John, and sorry for if any inconvenience thing during my contribution. Thank you very much. Selamat pagi.
Thank you very much, Pak Luki. Very interesting topic, and for me, it's very challenging when you mentioned about governmentability. That's responsibility.
The economic of this less tourists is different with the more tourists. What we can do that? what we call ecological fiscal transfer. So the government should have like ecological fiscal transfer to transfer the quote unquote the benefit of the regional of tourism to the other island. That I call ecosystem governance, not just only political governance. That's my APBD, something like that. That's my money, something like that. Is that utopia or not, Pak John? Is
No,
question.
no.
But
That's
my
a point.
concern, we should do like that instead of like different with context of the terrestrial governability, right? For instance. So I think my question is that the network, like for example, if in Tidung, for example, as I mentioned in the slide, the current capacity is a bit 1,000, for example, in 1 month. But the existing tourism is about 3,000. So how's to come? So we have to have the strict and the current capacities, but the access of the tourists can be transferred to the other island, but then can come to the Tidung for the next day. So it's not meaning that possible to have some networks of the current capacity. So I think maybe you should understand. I don't know. I think this is my, because in English is a bit ya Pak ya, kalau ngomong bahasa Inggris sama bahasa Indonesia itu beda ya. Tapi mudah-mudahan spiritnya itu kena gitu. So I think my answer is that network, current capacity networks, economic networks for the small island as the region should be done instead of single island as administrative or political governance. Thank you, Pak John.
Thank you, Pak Luki. Your concept on social economy should put more aspect as well, Pak Luki, political as well. Because when we propose and the political will of the government is not the government. That's why your topic is very interesting on the governability, the government ability to. One last question, Pak Luki, before we end the session. Again, about the small island. They have a potential as a source of resources, apart from like tourism, but the insularity of that island and infrastructure. If we have to develop that island with such promoting resources, what is the best solution for that kind of island remoteness and resources available and infrastructure? Thank you, Pak Luki.
My quick and shortcut answer is digital ecosystem, Pak John, to deal with the insularities and remoteness. Yes, when we talk about the conventional thinking of insularities, that naturally, because the insularity is part of the problem of small island after the size, yeah, because the smallness and insularity. There's some theory of the small islands governance. Smallness can be managed by, as I mentioned, networks. But insularity, because this naturally, I think, instead of putting some economic investment on infrastructures that maybe is not suit completely with the need of the small island. This is again not really. We can discuss about. Better to invest on the digital ecosystem for the island. So the digital infrastructures, the digital ecosystem for the island is very, very important in the context of this pandemic, for example. So the market, the economy can be digitalized, can be done as digital, and as maybe our dream, for example, that in the island of the Maluku, one island of the Indonesia as the hub of the digital center, for example. Or the headquarters of the startup business, for example, the headquarters of the ideas of how to connect with the digital market and fisheries, for example, or or agriculture. So yes, infrastructure, as I mentioned in the context of my SES network, there is some infrastructure, but what I'm trying to say is that the infrastructure should be not seen as the really physical infrastructures, but also concerned in the context of non-physical infrastructure, including the digital ecosystem. So this is a thing that maybe for the short time, the small island needs that one. So insularity, remoteness can be reduced in the impact of that by the digital ecosystem, as I mentioned, in the transformity of the new normal era. Maybe that's a bit not really answered the question, but some ideas on that can be discussed later on. Thank you, Pak Jod. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Pak Luki. Thank you. We have come to the end of the session with very interesting topic from Dr. Luki Adrianto, MSc. Very challenging and very, for me, it's a very, very good idea to be discussed in more detail, and then we make it into practice. Probably, if you don't mind, I'm personally like to have that PowerPoint as a resources.
Sure,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will send to Pak Max or Pak Yoisha. Yeah.
Okay, Pak Luki. Thank you very much, Pak Luki, for nice presentation. We will come to the end of this keynote speaker, and let's give a big applause to Dr. Luki Adrianto, MSc.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything. I will be here, Pak Ibu Yolanda and Pak Max, because I will keep in touch with Yamamoto Sensei and other Sensei from Fukushima, also Sydney, and also Professor from Thailand. I will be here if you don't mind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, not at all. I send it back to Idona. Thank you, Idona.
Yes, thank you, Dr. John. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are ready in plenary session. In the first plenary session, we are going to have 3 outstanding speakers, and the whole session will be led by a moderator, Dr. Insinyur Yolanda Apitule, Master of Applied Science. Dr. Apitule, the time is yours, please.
Thank you once again, Idonia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering the first plenary session. In this plenary session, we will have 3 invited speakers. The first one is Dr. Sophie Weber from the University of Sydney, Australia. The next one is Professor Dr. Sota Yamamoto, and the last is Dr. Dajeong Song. Both of them are from Kagoshima University. Dr. Sophie Weber will talk about community resilience to multiple shocks, insights from Pacific Island. And before I give 20 to 20 minutes from now for Dr. Sophie Weber, I would like to read her short bio. Dr. Sophie Weber is a lecturer in the School of Geosciences at the University of Sydney. Sophie is an economic and environmental geographer, studying adaptation and resilience in Southeast Asia and the Pacific region. She is particularly interested in the political economy of climate change, goods and services, including finance, information, and materials. Sophie, 20 to 20 minutes from now is yours, so time is yours. Excuse me, Sophie. Excuse me, but we can't hear you. Okay, then that's okay, Sophie, because Sophie has a problem with her microphone. So I will let Professor Dr. Sota Yamamoto and Dr. Dajeong Song, who are from Kagoshima University, to talk. Is it okay for you, Sota?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
I can hear you.
wait a moment.
Yes. Yep. Sota will introduce the Research Center of Kagoshima University and Amami Station. Then Dajeong Song, his colleague, will talk about the current situation of tourism, the most important industry in Amami Oshima Island under the COVID-19 outbreak. Sota and Song will talk in 20 to 25 minutes from now. And for you, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to ask questions for Sota and Song, please use the link in the chat room and I will read the question to them after the end of all the invited speakers present their presentation. Yes, Sota, time is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Yolanda. So my name is Sota Yamamoto from International Center for Island Studies, Kagoshima University. So Luki is very familiar with this area, Amami Islands, and I'm very happy to see you at this conference. And I'm very honored to be invited at this conference, and thank you very much for the committee and Ibu Yolanda. So I would like to talk about the current situation of industry in the Amami Island, Japan, under the COVID-19 outbreak. So first, I would like to introduce our research center and also like a general about COVID-19 outbreak in Japan. Then, Dajeong Song will introduce tourism under the COVID-19 outbreak in the Amami Islands. So actually, this is Kagoshima Prefecture, Kagoshima Province, and our research center is at the southern part of Japan, Kagoshima. But also we have an Amami station in the Amami Oshima Island here. So Kagoshima University is situated at the southern gateway of Japanese archipelago to the Asian region, and is blessed with a rich natural environment of seas, volcanic mountains, and islands. Our university has 9 faculties now. So our research center is, before our research center was research center for the Pacific Islands, but I don't know why 2 years or 3 years ago, the rector just changed our name, International Center for Island Studies. So our center is a Kagoshima University Cooperative Research and Educational Facility. So our activities are supported by the university's researchers and researchers from other domestic and overseas universities and institutes. So many staff from Umpati also helped our activities. So our research concept, we focuses on the studies on island zone in Oceania and its surrounding areas. So now I would like to introduce about, so this is the Amami Island. So Amami Island, it is known that the very high biodiversity area. So there are many endemic species. For example, like Amami black rabbit, only Amami Oshima Island and Tokunoshima Island. Or so also habu, this is poison snake. This is very famous. And not only the diversity, but also culturally very unique in the Amami areas, very different from the mainland Japan and also Okinawa area. For example, island songs, traditional clothes, and shamanism, and also shochu, sopi, the maruku sopi. So shochu, spirit made of sugar cane. So this is Amami Station. we have 4 staff and 4 staff. So the COVID-19 outbreak in Japan, I would like to talk about this. The number of cases gradually increased March 2020. On 7th April, 1 month state of emergency for Tokyo. It means like a lockdown, and the prefectures of Kanagawa, Saitama, Chiba, Osaka, Hyogo, Fukuoka. And then on 16 April, the lockdown was extended to the rest of the whole Japan until on 25th May. So I would like to introduce the industry in the Amami Islands under the COVID-19 outbreak. So the most important industry in Amami Islands is tourism, but my colleague, Da Johnson, will introduce that. So I would like to introduce agriculture and fishery. So after the COVID-19 outbreak, price of fish fell down at half price on March in the Amami Islands because restaurants are closed, so the consumption of fish was down. So fish trade also decreased, almost no trade until May and half in July and 80% now. And also in Amami area, aquaculture for brown shrimp and also tuna, but almost no shipping of brown still now. Because Tokyo, like a big city, Tokyo or Osaka, many restaurants still closed. But agriculture was not much affected by the COVID-19 outbreak, except for flowers cultivated in Okinawa Elabu Island, because many events like wedding ceremony or something like that were canceled, or events themselves had not been held. And this is very interesting. So the price of cow in Kagoshima Prefecture, so after the COVID break, the price was going very down until like May, because also consumption of beef was down in Japan. But still now the price is not good in October. So then Son Dajong will introduce about tourism now in the Amami Islands.
Hi, I'm Da Jong-soo. Today I talk about tourism in Amami Island. First, I will talk about status of Amami Islands when the COVID-19 has occurred. The first case of infection on the Amami Islands was on April 1. At that time, Kagoshima Prefecture has fewer infected people than other areas such as Tokyo, Chiba, and Osaka. So many people thought Kagoshima Prefecture was free from COVID-19. In the Amami Oshima, 2 of the infected people came out on April 17. People began to watch out for people coming to the island from outside. The number of infected people was decreased in August in whole Japan. Therefore, many people start to travel around Japan. So the number of visitors to Amami has been increasing. In Amami Oshima, an infected person appeared in November for the first time in about half a year. In addition, the number of infected people has been increasing in Tokunoshima for the last few days. The island society is a small community, so we have strengths and weakness. First, I talk about weakness. Compared to the mainland Japan, the island area has limited transportation for medical access, the local government, and a higher percentage of elderly people. When when an infected person occurs, information about the infected person spread immediately. For example, rumor. And we have a strength. Many people use their one car due to limited transportation, which help to prevent the spread of infection. Contact with infected people can be confirmed immediately because of a small community, and it can be dealt with on early stage. Now I'm talking about tourism in Amami Island. Among the Amami Islands, tourism is the most important industry in Amami Oshima and Yoron Island. The number of visitors to the Amami Islands exceeded 680,000 in 2019, a record high. The most common departure are Kagoshima, Kanto, Okinawa, Kansai, and Fukuoka. The tourism industry in the Amami Islands is characterized by until nature with abundant biodiversity. There are ocean activities such as diving and snorkeling with sea turtle, and whale watching and swimming with whale. Natural observation tour, walking in national forest with guide. Mangrove forest tour on kayaks and endemic species such as Amami black rabbit and rare animals and plants. This graph is number of passengers Amami Airport in the first half of 2020. In 2019, most high is August, 19,000 people. And 2020, in May, under the 10,000 people visit Amami Island. How many people take an activity tour in Amami Oshima? For example, Mangrove Park kayak. Mangrove Park is made Amami City. Mangrove Park kayak is most popular activity tour in Amami Oshima. The number of kayak users in April 2020 was 200. And May use less than 100. But 2019, April and May use about 3,000 people. Sorry. And administrative support under COVID-19. Government 100,000 yen give stimulus check, and subsidy program sustaining business, and promotion of support project. For example, go to travel. This is receive a 35% discount on domestic travel expenses, and 15% discount coupon issued. The campaign began on July, but excluding Tokyo, because Tokyo has many infected people. Now, the government voluntarily restrained on travel to Osaka and Sapporo. Tokyo asked the elderly and petitioned with underlying disease to self-reflect to travel and come from Tokyo. Amami Oshima municipality has carried out a project to support half of the cost hotel fees or participating in tour programs for local residents. Wide Area Administration Association of Amami Island start new project. Amami Island Ecotourism Attractive Experience Project. this project is to promote eco-tour guides to conduct online tours and distribution of promotion videos specializing in eco-tours.
Okay, then I would like to introduce the last slide. So my colleagues said, so the municipality now try to promote eco tour guides to conduct online tours. But private sectors, private companies already did the online tour. So this is a shochu factory, so sopi factory. It's like an excursion online. So they try to introduce how to make a shochu sopi, and they just watching through the Zoom. And also the other shochu factory doing the same thing in the other island. So I think so now one private company tried to promote to sell products from Amami Island to online. So I think this is a new system for tourists. So now people cannot come to Amami Islands, but maybe from Tokyo or whatever, they can just join the online tour. And at that time, maybe they can buy first shochu from this online shop, and they can drink shochu and watching the tour. So I think maybe 1 year later, still maybe corona outbreak still going on. So this small island area, they have to think about some online tour or online a product selling, something like that. So thank you very much for my presentation.
Thank you so much, Sota. Actually, that's also happened in Indonesia. Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, yes. How the tourism agency also do the virtual tourism to improve or to increase the number of people to do tourism. Thank you for taking first chance in this session. Yes, we now will move to Sophie. Sophie, are you here again?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me this time?
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that problem, and thank you very much to the other presenters for filling in for me while I checked my microphone.
Thank you. Time is yours for 20 to 25 minutes from now.
Okay, great.
Please,
I'll share my presentation now. Okay. All right. So thank you very much to everyone for coming to listen to my presentation, and thank you to the organizers of this interesting international conference. I'm really enjoying learning about all the different islands in the broader Asia Pacific region, and it's a lovely opportunity to talk with you about some of my research. And particularly thank you to Dr. Yolanda for inviting me to give this presentation. So I am a lecturer at the University of Sydney. So I live on a very big island, not a small island, but I think there are some interesting overlaps in what I'm going to talk about today that relate to small islands and big islands. So mostly I do research about adaptation and resilience in the Pacific, and I've also done a lot of work in Java and Jakarta over the last few years, but I've never been to anywhere in Eastern Indonesia. Perhaps the closest I've been to Eastern Indonesia is in Solomon Islands in the Pacific region. And I'm interested in the kind of economic and political economic impacts of climate change in small islands. So this photo is of Kiribati, the capital of Kiribati, of Tarawa. And so I've been doing research in these very vulnerable low-lying islands in the Pacific for about the last 10 years. And I'm interested in how they might use climate information to help manage the impacts of climate change. But what I'm going to talk to you about today, what I'm going to want to say today is about what might be some of the strengths of small island states in managing multiple kinds of shocks. So both the shocks from climate change as well as the shocks from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to say that small islands are particularly vulnerable to shocks from climate change and also from the pandemic and the health impacts and the economic impacts of the pandemic, but also that they have a really big number and a big, I suppose, structure of strength that can really help manage these shocks. And the important thing I want to say is that if we think too much about the vulnerabilities of these places, sometimes we will miss the strength and the resilience. And so I'm going to talk about that with respect to both climate change and the health and economic crisis of COVID. There's the kind of idea or the claim that small islands are particularly vulnerable to climate change is kind of all over the international conferences, like the conferences that are going on now. The president of Fiji has been very vocal the last few days about the extreme vulnerability of the Pacific Islands to climate change. And this is a very common story that is said about small island states. And this is because they're particularly, sorry, I skipped a slide. Here we are, back at this slide, sorry. These are some physical vulnerabilities, so related to being very low lying. This is a photo from Dahrah in Kiribati, which is in the Central Pacific, where most of the islands are only on average about 2 meters above sea level, and some islands are 3 meters above sea level. So this makes them very vulnerable to sea level rise and to storm surges. Islands are also physically vulnerable because they have long coastlines to land areas, and also because they're seen as being particularly isolated. The other risks in a country like Kiribati is access to fresh water. So because there is not much land on which to capture rainfall, the only source of fresh water is the groundwater lens, which is very vulnerable to overtopping during storm events and because of sea level rise. So the other area of exposure is being exposed to shocks, to extreme events. And this is very common in the Pacific, both from tropical storms, from cyclones, as well as from earthquakes and tsunamis, and this is similar to the case in Indonesia. And so this is another kind of area of physical vulnerability. But the second area of vulnerability that we often talk about is about social and economic vulnerability. And so this is, many Pacific islands are facing rapid population growth in cities and urbanization, people moving from the outer islands into the cities. And so this is causing some social and economic vulnerability in these cities. But it's also the case that the kinds of livelihoods and economic products that are common in these islands are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So they're very dependent on natural resources, which will vary a lot in the future. And so this, so for instance, in the Solomon Islands, where I've also done research, up to 80% of the population of the Solomon Islands are dependent on the production of and marketing of food crops, timber, and other natural resources for their livelihoods. So there's a high proportion of the population that depend on these natural resources that we predict might become more scarce or more difficult to grow and sell and so on. And so I want to call this narrative, this story about climate change in these small islands, I call this a vulnerability story. And so it's very, it's not to say that these facts aren't true. These issues are very much true. But what I want to say is that this story about vulnerability really misses a lot of the strengths and resilience in in countries in the Pacific. And so I think if we pay too much attention to these vulnerability stories, we miss the stories about resilience and strength in the face of multiple shocks. And so I'm thinking about resilience as the ability to transform in the face of shocks and stresses, to bounce back into new, stronger states in the future. And so one of the important points about this vulnerability story is that it really misses the causes of vulnerability. So what has produced this vulnerability in these small islands? So these are economic conditions and social conditions that are not necessarily produced in the small islands themselves. They're produced in kind of, questions around terms of trade and global negotiations, which the small islands aren't particularly strong players. And obviously, how is climate change produced? Well, that is not actually produced in these small island states. They're obviously on the end of a global problem, which is very much not of their own making. So this vulnerability story kind of naturalizes vulnerability as being caused in small islands, rather than recognizing the big islands that are responsible for creating these conditions. And the second point too is, again, that we miss these stories of strength and resilience. So for where I do research in Kiribati, for instance, the politicians are very careful to emphasize that they're not victims of climate change, that they are taking action to transform their situation. And so they emphasize that they don't want to be seen as climate refugees. They want to be seen as skilled migrants that can contribute to economies around the world. And so rather than migrants being seen as fleeing climate change, it's about skilled labor migration that can transform their economy and build sustainability in small islands. And so this is particularly through care work, so working, coming to Australia and New Zealand to work in care economies, and then building strength through remittances and sending back money to Kiribati. The next point is that these vulnerability narratives privilege Western framings of small islands. So framings produced particularly in Europe about how what are the conditions of islands. And so in the Pacific, there's a saying that they're not isolated islands, they're in a sea of connections. And so rather than recognizing the isolation that comes with being small islands very far away from each other, they instead privilege an understanding where the sea can provide opportunities for travel and connection across space rather than isolation. Also, privileges modern kinds of infrastructure, which are important, but also can be particularly vulnerable in the face of climate change. This has been really obvious in Vanuatu, where there's been a lot of cyclone events, and where traditional housing has actually proved much more adaptable than modern kinds of housing. And so this idea that modern infrastructure and modern housing is better doesn't necessarily play out, or doesn't recognize the strength of traditional kinds of housing in Vanuatu. And so I think that this story of vulnerability and resilience is also true of COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic in the Pacific. So most countries in the Pacific have now had some coronavirus cases, but there are a few, particularly in Micronesia, that have not. Many of the cases in the Pacific Islands have not had any cases until very recently, until November, when they've been repatriating citizens from the United States, from the Philippines, and in French parts of the Pacific from France. And so these people have brought COVID to the Pacific. And so for the most part, the small islands in the Pacific have have fared very well in the COVID crisis in terms of the health impacts. Because they were able to shut their borders very quickly, they have not had any COVID cases until maybe November. And so that gave them a lot of time, 6 months, to kind of strengthen their health systems to be able to cope with the pandemic. Most countries in the Pacific didn't have infrastructure like ventilators or PPE and other kinds of things like that. And so that 6 months gave them time to get ventilators. Australia gave a lot of ventilators to the Pacific. And so that gave them the opportunity to build that health infrastructure. And so mostly the success of the Pacific Islands in terms of the health impacts is due to the isolation. So due to their smallness and remoteness, which has meant they've been able to shut down their borders quite easily. But there's also some evidence to suggest that they've been able to manage the pandemic well because of social cohesion and trust and faith in the government across the Pacific as a whole. With some exceptions, obviously, this is not true in Papua New Guinea. But many other places, they have seen very strong response and very socially consistent response. So it's very lucky that these small islands in the Pacific have been spared from the COVID pandemic for the most part, from the health implications, because if it did spread to many of these islands, the impacts would be devastating. We even see cases now where there's not enough, when countries like Vanuatu, who are repatriating citizens, don't have enough tests, enough COVID tests to test everyone that is coming into the country. And so you can imagine that if there was a broader outbreak, then that would be very devastating. They would not have the capacity to manage that. They don't, particularly in the cities of the Pacific where there are large numbers of informal settlements, and this is something that would be familiar in the Indonesia context. You can imagine there's very poor sanitation infrastructure. You can imagine that COVID would run rampant in these communities. So there are considerable benefits then to being a small island and managing the coronavirus outbreak, but there are also a lot of challenges, and particularly the economic impacts of the crisis have been felt very strongly in the country. Sorry, Dr. Yolanda, sorry, I didn't catch the time when I started. How much longer do I have to talk? It's okay, can keep going? Sorry. Thank you very much. I've just got a few more slides, so just...
You still have, yes, you still have time.
Okay, thank you. This is my second last slide, so it should be okay. So obviously small islands in the Pacific depend incredibly on tourism for their economies. Most countries in the Pacific, about 50% of their economy comes from tourism. And this is almost entirely international tourism. So obviously the economic impact of closing borders has been really profound on the economy. And so this economy is made up of cruise ships and international tourists, mostly from Australia and New Zealand, but also from Europe and North America to some extent. Almost all of the formal employment in many countries in the Pacific comes from tourism. And then there's, big ripple on effects in terms of informal employment as well from that. There are some estimates that 50% of tourism businesses in Fiji is one economy which is really dependent on tourism. Up to 50% of businesses will be closed. And these are, the Fiji tourism market is very international. And there are a lot of international hotel chains and so on, but most of the businesses that will close permanently and not come back are small and medium-sized businesses that are locally owned and that don't have any international connections. Okay, so those businesses that are doing the most in terms of the economy of the island they're the ones that are going to be the most negatively impacted by the shut borders. There's been some talk about creating air bridges between Australia and New Zealand with the Pacific to facilitate tourism, particularly to Fiji and Vanuatu. We will see if that happens over the next few months. It's a possibility, but there's definitely been debate amongst the government in terms of whether or not to prioritize the health benefits of keeping COVID out versus the economic impacts of shutting their borders. So the second major impact is on remittances. Many countries in the Pacific depend a lot on remittances from labourers working mostly in New Zealand and Australia. And on the one hand, temporary labour migration has not been able to happen, although this is now changing. There are agricultural workers coming from the Pacific to Australia. There's been, for the last few weeks, there's been a couple of flights of agricultural workers from Vanuatu coming to Australia to work, to pick fruit and vegetables, and this will continue. So there's been a loss of these remittances, which are very important for supporting livelihoods in the Pacific. But it's also the case that more permanent migrants who are sending remittances back to the islands are more likely to have lost their jobs during the pandemic, because they're more likely to be discriminated against in labour markets, and so to be working in those lower paid and more fragile jobs that have really bottomed out of the economy. So their economic impacts from remittances have also been quite bad. And usually remittances is what covers the cost of shocks and stresses in countries after disasters. For instance, remittances increase, but obviously in this instance, remittances haven't been able to cover the economic costs. The other issue is that governments haven't been able to provide a lot of social assistance because they don't have the kind of technological infrastructures in place to be able to provide these cash transfers, as well as the fiscal power. They don't have the money to provide these cash transfers. And this is also a problem in Indonesia, where there are large portions of the country that are dependent on the informal sector for employment, and the government is not able, or not willing, not able to cover those who have lost their jobs in the informal sector. And so this is a big problem in the Pacific. Where cash transfers were made, and there were some efforts to do that in Fiji, they were very effective, but this has kind of fallen away. So so this has been a kind of bad news story about the economic impacts, but one of the good news stories that I want to emphasize is that one of the main impacts of this is that the urban labour markets have collapsed, and people have been moving back to the outer islands, to their kind of long-standing ancestral homes, some of whom have not lived there for generations. So people have fled the cities in Solomon Islands. Up to half of the city of Honiara, which is by far the biggest city and the capital of the Solomon Islands, up to half of the population has returned to the outer islands. And this has caused some social and economic conflict that is kind of contrasts to the case in Japan, where fish markets have plummeted. People have returned to subsistence forms of agriculture and fishing. And so there have been some conflicts over fishing rights, mostly fishing kind of conservation programs have not been respected, and so there's really been an increase in people fishing, with a fairly negative impact on the ecological environment, on the oceans themselves. So the kind of strength of family ties back to land has been really important in terms of allowing people to survive amidst this major economic challenge, but it's not been without some tension and some conflict. And there's been some evidence that food crops have been replacing cash crops. That takes time to change over, but that I think is a positive impact on people's health. There's a lot of evidence that as people move from the cities to the outer islands, their health and nutrition has increased dramatically, as they're mostly producing food for themselves rather than buying cheap and unhealthy food in the city. So this has been a real kind of win of the pandemic, that people have in the Pacific, in the cities, who were eating quite poor diets have really been able to improve their diets. So in sum, I want to say that the economic impacts of the pandemic have been devastating in the Pacific. It's estimated that up to a quarter of the population of many in the Pacific will be living in extreme poverty as a result of the pandemic. So this is a really devastating economic and social impact. But it's important that we also recognize that there have been a lot of good outcomes from this as well. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I think that the COVID and coronavirus pandemic offers a lot of opportunities for us to as an international community, to think about how to build better small islands, especially in the face of climate change into the future. And I think we need to take this opportunity with both hands and take it very seriously. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the presentation of Triple S, Sota, Song, and Sophie at this time. So now the question and answer session for three of them. Sota, we already have questions for you. Sota.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Sota, we have questions for you. The first one, how is the impact of the state intervention and market penetration on changes in social capital in small island fishing community? How is the impact of the state intervention and market penetration on changes in social capital in small island fishing community?
Fishing community でどうなった？コロナの後どうなってる？ Just a moment, okay.
Should I read the next question or?
Next question,
yeah,
please.
Okay. Tourism principle is selling the beauty of the nature to tourists and in real, not virtual. What do you think about the prospectus of Zoom or virtual tourism? As you mentioned that nowadays people, to increase the tourism agency do the virtual tourism. So what do you think the sustainability of it?
Okay, so I'm sorry for the first question. I am not familiar with the fishing community, so I cannot answer the question. I'm very sorry. But about online like a tour, I think for the future also it is good idea, because some people would like to come to Amami Oshima. Of course, they visit Amami Oshima and back to their home. But after that, of course, sometimes they don't have a time to come back to Amami or like money. So at the time, but they really wanna enjoy the taste or like atmosphere of Amami Islands. They can join the field tour. I mean the online tour. So now it's a good chance for Amami people, because not so many tourists come to the Amami Islands. It means now they have to like make the good system for like online tour now. And also they can promote to sell their products online. So when, of course, the tourists can come to Amami Island to enjoy Amami and back to home, maybe they remind, oh, I want to eat this cuisine or something like that. So they can sell to the those people. So online, like a tour or online selling the products, it's much, I think, much more important in the future.
Okay, thank you. It's So according to you, it's much more important for the future. Can I ask the next question, Sota?
Okay.
Yeah. What are the scientific considerations for Kagoshima University to establish International Center for Small Island Studies?
Is it a concept or
Scientific consideration.
consideration?
Yeah, for Kagoshima University to establish International Center for Small Island Studies.
No, actually, our research center is already more than 40 years. So Kagoshima is the southern tip of Japan, and we are very interested in like Amami and also Okinawa area. Then like Southeast Asian like islands, including like Maluku, and also Pacific areas. So Kagoshima is the gateway to these small islands. So the government also and also the university think to study the Pacific areas, including Maluku, it's very important. So we continue our research.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So we have one question for Sophie. Yes, Sophie.
Hello.
Could you tell us a little bit about the typical policies related to small island in Solomon Island as member of small island development states? Can you catch?
Typical policies in what sense? Like in terms of climate change, or
Maybe in both, in climate change, or maybe how they face the shocks, multiple shocks in not only COVID but also climate change.
Yeah, sure. So how would I characterize the policy of the Solomon Islands? So you know, some islands in the Pacific have been very vocal about responding to climate change. Some have kind of taken the lead in the small island developing states forum. So especially the atoll nations like Tuvalu, Kiribati, but also Fiji as kind of the, you know, the kind of economic powerhouse in the region. The Solomon Islands have not been quite so outspoken. In some ways, the Solomon Islands are dealing with, you know, the kind of economic and political impacts of the tensions in the 1990s. And so their international policy has been much more focused on managing that. And a lot of the international policy, a lot of the official development assistance and the aid has been focused on managing those tensions and that have followed since the late 1990s. So for the last 20 years, and kind of keeping peace in the islands. And so that has meant a lot of emphasis on how to sustainably and with good community relations manage extraction of timber resources and other natural resources. So I wouldn't say the Solomon Islands has been very outspoken about climate change in the small island developing states, although they are taking it seriously, and they do work with a lot of international organizations with a particular focus on adaptation and questions around food security are really important, particularly in the rapidly growing cities. So Honiara is a really important site for managing the impacts of disasters because it is growing very rapidly, and many people in the city are very, very poor and do not have good formal access to land, do not have good formal access to food. So questions of food security are very important, as well as how to respond to disasters, including earthquakes and tsunamis and cyclones. So the Solomon Islands, like Indonesia, experiences a lot of natural disasters which has a very big impact on their economy and on their communities. Thank you for that question. I hope I answered it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sophie. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of first plenary session. We already have Sota, Song, and Sophie in this plenary session. They already mentioned how shocks include the COVID-19 impacted the community economy. It's not only negative impact, but also positive impact to the community or small island community, the economy or small island community. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of first plenary session, and I would like to thank to Professor Sota Yamamoto, Dr. Da Jeong Song, and Dr. Sophie Weber who already presented in this conference. So thank you once again, and I do hope we can meet another chance in the real conference in Pattimura University. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. And before that, Sophie, if you don't mind, can I have your PPT?
Yeah, I will email that to you, Yolanda.
Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you
once
very
again.
much for having me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you
for your
so
questions.
much. So I'll get the microphone back to Idonia, please, Idonia.
Thank you, Dr. Yola. Ladies and gentlemen, in the second plenary session, we are going to have 3 outstanding speakers, and the whole session will be led by a moderator, Irma Kesaulia, PhD. Ibu Irma, I have yours.
Yes, thank you, Idonia. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. After having the 2 interesting sessions, now we will have the 3rd session with the speakers. The first one is Professor Dr. Nawamin Prashanant from Buriram Rajabat University, Thailand. The second one is Professor Dr. Hermin Soselisa from Pattimura University. And the third one, Alexio Leonito Amaral, Master of Science from Timor Leste University. So in this plenary session, each speaker will have 20 minutes only for the presentation, and after the presentation of the 3 speakers, we will have Q&A. So for the first speaker is Professor Nawamin Prashanant, PhD, and the title of his presentation is Promoting Sustainable Local Tourism, a case study of Sanuanok community in Buriram province of Thailand. Before he gives the presentation, I will read his brief curriculum CV. So Professor Dr. Nawamin Prashanant got his PhD in English Language Studies from Suraneri University of Technology, Thailand, and his master degree in English from Mahasarakham University, Thailand. So for administrative position, from 2007 up to now, he is a chairman of ME Buriram Rajabat University. And from 2013 to 2017, the assistant of the president of International Affairs Buriram Rajabat University. And from 2017 up to now, he is a vice president for International Affairs Buriram Rajabat University. So he has published 8 textbooks and also have written a number of peer-reviewed articles. I will not read all of them because there are many of them. So that is really a great CV of Professor Pranshanat. So Professor Pranshanat, you have 20 minutes for the presentation. And for all participants, if you have any question, you can write it down on the question form that will be posted by committee member on the chat room below. Prof. Pranshanat, the time is yours.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear your voice clearly, and also your presentation is perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, okay, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me to share my research with the researchers, okay, in Indonesia and around the world. Okay, for today, I will present, okay, my work, okay, entitled Promoting Sustainable Local Tourism, a case study of Sunwon community in Buriram province, Thailand. Okay, I worked in Buriram Ratchapat University, just the moderator mentioned. Okay, these are the outline of my presentation. I will give you the background, not just only of my work, but for my province as well. And then I will talk about the purposes of my study, and then the methodology that I use, and the findings, and then the conclusion. Okay, let's start with our province, okay, because I'm from Buriram Ratchapat University. Ratchapat is mean Raja, it means king. It means the University of the King. Okay, Buriram, okay, this is two words. The first one, Buri refer to city, and Ram refer to happy in English. Okay, so Buriram is a Thai word, refer to the happy city or the city of happiness. Okay, if you, okay, really want to visit Thailand, don't miss Buriram because you will be happy when you are at our province, right? So take a look for our province slogans, right? The slogan of our province is the city of sandstone sanctuaries, land of volcanoes, beautiful seals, rich cultures, and the great sport city. So just take a look for the first one. Okay, we start with the city of sandstone sanctuaries. We have about 60 sandstone sanctuary, okay, in our province. The very beautiful one that you can see here with Phnom Rung Sanctuary, okay, and then it is situated at the top of the mountain. Okay, if you come here, I will, okay, take you there to visit the very marvelous sanctuary. And then the second one, the land of volcanoes, we have about 6 volcanoes, but it's instinct here. Okay, and then we have the volcanoes festival every year, okay, at the end of each year, okay, in December, in this month, right, at the end, maybe 29 or and 30th of December. And then for the very beautiful one is about Thai silk, especially Buriram silk is a very magnificent, okay, piece of silk, okay, that we produce, okay, in our province. Okay, if you come here, you can see, okay, the beautiful one. And then the rich cultures, we have 4 main ethnic groups in our province. Okay, the first one is Thai Lao, and then the second one Thai Khmer, or it seemed like the first one, it seemed like Thai Lao is mean just like Lao country, and the second one is Thai Khmer or Thai Cambodian. It's just like Cambodian people, and then there's Thai Gui, okay, who relates to the elephants, and then the last one Thai Dung, right, or Thai Korat, okay. This is a rich culture, and then it's very popular, okay, around the world. I think we are the great sport city because we have the biggest football stadium in Buram province, and then we have about here, and we try to promote not just only the sport activity of tourism, but we always promote about the culture, okay, of 4 ethnic groups in our province. So from my background, right, why do I have to do the research about promoting the sustainable local tourism in our province? Because during 2018 until 2024, Buriram province, okay, we organized the MotoGP competition, and then we always, okay, welcome the foreigners to join the big events. They are about 200,000 foreigners each year, okay, to join or to participate this event. And then you can see that when they visit here, they want to visit many places in Buriram, and then Sanuan Nok village is promoted and recommended for a visit because Sanuan Nok community is not far from Buriram city. It's just only 15 kilometers, spend about 10 kilometers or maybe about 5 to 10 minutes to reach this community. Okay, so to welcome both Thai and foreign tourists. Okay, so I really want to know how will Sanuan Nok villagers prepare themselves to be the good host, because there are about 10,000 foreigners, okay, coming to visit this community. So I would like to know, okay, how will they prepare themselves, and then what are their needs? Do they have the problems or not? Okay, because the authority of Thailand, tourism authority of Thailand, okay, help them to promote and then to help them to create many things there. So I set 2 purposes of my study. The first one, I would like to know about the tourism information that they provide, okay, to the tourists, especially for the foreign tourists. And then the second one, I would like to analyze their needs on local tourism for sustainability of the villagers here. So is it enough for them, okay, that they offer to or provide to the tourists or not? So from this one, okay, take a look for my methodology, look for the population and samples, and then the research instrument that I used, and then how to collect the data and how do I analyze the data. Take a look for the population. Sanuan Nok is very small village, okay, just only 150 households, and then there are about 636 villagers, okay, in the community. So for my sample that I select, okay, for study, I select just only 20 local people, okay, by purposive sampling, especially for the headmen and then the people who, okay, are related to organizing the tourism, okay, for both Thai and foreign tourists who go to visit them. So for my research instrument, I use two things. The first one, I use the observation form that I set, and I would like to see, okay, about their activity that they provide. I mean, the tourism activity that they provide to the tourists. And the second one, I use semi-structured interview, okay, to interview 20 local people who are relevant to the tourism in this community. So for the step of data collection, okay, because it's not far from the university, just only 15 kilometers. So I went there and collect all data by myself. And then I observe the tourism information provided to the tourists of the community. And then I use Thai language to interview the local people to get more information about their needs. And then about the tourism provided, tourism information provided. And then each of the interviewee, okay, was interviewed about 10 minutes. And then each interview was audio tape, and then I transcribed them. Okay, for analyzing the data, okay, both data from observation form and then semi-structured interview, okay, I analyze by using content analysis technique, right? And then look for the theme, okay, of them. And then for the findings, number one, I want to look for the provided. Now, top they provide to the tourists. The community history, that's very interesting one. And then the second one is about welcoming ceremony, and then welcoming dance, local dance, and then local ways of life. It's in the term of base or activity base that they set and let them to learn. And then the local souvenirs, and then the homestay. Okay, just take a look for each one. Just I told you, Sanuan Nok, okay, it's a small community where locals speak Khmer. Khmer is the dialect of just similar to Cambodian language in Cambodia country. Okay, it's promoted to be the Silk Village, okay, since 2013. And then it's a unique local community that is about 150 years ago. This is the photo of the sign, okay, in front of the community. Just you can see, welcome to Thai Silk Village. And then this is okay, the sign, okay, in Thai words, right? It means the Silk Village, Sanuan Nok, right? Just I told you, it is promoted to build the Silk Village, Khmer Village, right? Since 2013 by Tourism Authority of Thailand. And very interesting one, okay, they have a shuttle, okay, to welcome, okay, the foreigners who visit, okay, this village. That you can see, right? This is similar space ship, right? We call space shuttle. Okay, it's very amazing one here. Okay, and then they welcome, okay, the tourists, apparently on weekends, okay, by the headmen, right? And then their members. Okay, and this is a very, very important, is seem like to give a moral support about the spirit to welcome, okay, a ceremony by using the dialect or the local, right? In here we call to give them the moral support. And then this is the photo of them, right? Is we have the the sermon, something like that. Okay. And then as well, they have the dance, welcoming dance. Okay, with the what is it? The unique dance. Okay, in Khmer group, right? Khmer group, Lao Khmer group here. Okay, very amazing them. And then you can see, okay, there are many tourists. Okay, they welcome, and then they just, okay, use the scarf produced in the local community to welcome, and use, okay, Thai culture, just why. Okay, why is mean to show respect or to say hello, okay, with sawadee, something like that in Thai, or good morning, or hello, something like that is one. And then in the morning, okay, we have a shot to see the amazing one, okay, with the monks, okay, walking around the village, and then we offer food, okay, to the monk. Okay, this is a way of Thai or Buddhism in Thailand, especially in this ethnic group. And then after that, they have many knowledge bases provided. It's about 7 or about 5 knowledge base. The first one, the foreigners, we have a chance to learn, okay, and to try about the local music instrument, okay, in this area, okay, in this community, right? It's very, very interesting one right here. And the second one, they have a chance to learn how to make the basket, right? We call a basketry knowledge base. Okay, this is about the thing that they use in daily life, and then they can practice and do it here. With the local people, they will teach them how to make it. And then the next one, they have the very what do we call, amazing food, okay, here, and then they will learn, okay, how to cook food, okay, in this area, okay, in this local community. We got to learn how to cook local food here. And then because you know that they have the silver village, and then they have a chance to learn how to weave the Thai silk, Thai Khmer silk here, okay, with the traditional instrument for weaving silk. Okay, this one, right? So you can do it, something like that, if you have a chance to go to Buriram. Okay, and then this is the products, okay, of the silk weaving in this local community. Right, this is the raw material, right, of it. And then you will have a chance to learn about wood carving, okay, of the people here, especially from coconut, right, okay, to produce something here. Right, also with the wood, right? You have a chance to learn, not just only to buy or to see, right here. And then the very important one is about agriculture. Okay, we just should know that Rama the Ninth, okay, is very famous about the philosophy of sufficiency economy, and then this area they try, okay, to preserve the sufficiency economy. Okay, all things here, okay, especially food, they just produce by their own. They grow vegetables and many things, or rice, something like that. You learn how to do agriculture, and maybe fishery, how to culture or cultivate about the fish or maybe shell or something like that. And then in each weekend, okay, we provide about the local products, okay, to the foreign tourists or Thai tourists who visit them. We call vegan local market. We have to buy, okay, everything, okay, produced in this community. Okay, this is the opening remarks, okay, of vegan local market, okay, by the Thai Prime Minister. Okay, just the new, the current one. And then this is the photos, okay, of the local products, okay, that you can see at the vegan local market on Saturday and Sunday. This is the example, okay, of the foreign tourists who appreciate or are with the local things here. And local food, right, is very amazing as well. This is in Khmer, local food. Okay, you will not only try, but you will practice how to cook it, right? It's local food here, right? Is that you can see it's a worm, right? Silkworm, okay, here. And as well, the last one that we can find, they offer or provide the homestay. If, okay, both Thai and foreign tourists want to stay there to learn the ways of life of people here, okay, they offer or provide the homestay, okay, in to the foreign tourists and Thai tourists. From the finding for the second one, okay, the needs, okay, just you can see there are 3 things that they need to, okay, be the complete tourism community as sustainability. Okay, they need to be trained in the following topic. Okay, the first one, they really want, okay, to be trained to be a good host. Okay, and the second one, to train about the first aids for helping the tourists who will have an accident, something like that, in the area. And then they really want to train, okay, or practice about English using each knowledge base. As you can see, okay, there are many knowledge bases there. And then they provide in the dialect and Thai. And then they really want to present, okay, in English as well. And then they need the educational institutions such as the university help them to translate the science in the country from Thai into English or Chinese, maybe next time in Malaya, something like that. And then the very important one, because they have many products, local products, and they need the educational institution, especially for the university, help them to design the tourism products, packaging, and then translate into English, because you know it's international language. Okay, from the findings, okay, I will go to the conclusion. Just, you know, this study is carried out in order to provide an insight into the tourism information provided and needs of local people, especially in Sanuan North, right? That they want to be the sustainable local community in tourism in order to welcome both Thai and foreign tourists as a good host. So the finding might be as a guideline, okay, for the people who want to organize, okay, to help them, especially to organize the training course which lead the improvement of the quality of tourism industry. And it may be utilized, okay, to those responsible for the policy and plannings, as well as the related to the organization, in order to have a clearer understanding of needs of person who plan to work and develop the community to be the sustainable tourism in Thailand and all over the world. Okay, at the end, okay, of my presentation, thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you, Professor Prashyanant. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have question, you can just write it down in the form, and then by the end, I will read it during the Q&A. So the second speaker is Professor Dr. Hermin Soselisa. Before she gives the presentation, I will read her brief curriculum vitae. Prof. Hermin Soselisa is an anthropologist teaching at Pattimura University in Ambon. Her main research interests are the Sweden and fishing communities in small islands of Maluku, especially on folk knowledge, food use, land, and marine resources management. She is the author of Fisheries of Garagos, Livelihood and Resource Management in Maluku Islands. And that book was first published in 2004. She also writes a number of articles on local resources management in Maluku, such as the Maluku Marinisasi and about islands community in Buanos, Seram, Kei, Aru, Tanimbar, Kisar, Banda, Ambon, and Lease Islands. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to listen to the presentation of Prof. Soselisa, and I would like to remind you again, if you have any question, you can write it down, the question, and please write down the name of the speakers that you address the question. Prof. Hermin, you have 20 minutes for the presentation, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Ibu Irma. Can you see my slide?
Yes, everything is clear, and also your voice, please.
Thank you. Selamat siang, Ibu Bapak. Firstly, I would like to thank the committee to invite me to share with all of you the issue of small island communities resilience. Okay, yeah. The pandemic we are facing now has increasingly made us aware of the need for a kind of community resilient system to deal with natural and non-natural disaster. In fact, community living on small islands, including in Maluku, have implemented adaptation strategies, kind of coping mechanism in dealing with both ecological and social crises, considering that they may be more vulnerable due to the small and limited land area. Now, since culture is about knowledge, fair use, and a long process of learning and understanding the physical and social environment, the choice of particular rules and strategies is related to responses to the situation of local environment that give ecosystem service to the people. The experiences of Maluku small island communities over centuries present informative and useful cases for understanding how coping mechanisms based on local strategies might work. Although not all forms of adaptation and new strategies are compatible with the local ecological condition of small islands. I will not talk about today's new normal or COVID, but about their experience. People when experience of certain uncertainty people went through in the past from my previous research. I will discuss two cases here from Kei and Buano. You can see the arrow to show exactly the island that I will talk about. Buano in the north and in the right-hand side is a K. This all in the Maluku Islands that's related to crisis caused by ecological, economic, and social political events that occur over different periods of times as that we may learn from them that they're going through within their ecological history. Using anthropological approach, the data collection focus on oral history through interview and local residents and also observation, of course. Conversation describes a human-environment relation through local experiences, inherited knowledge, and memories of people about their ecology, their environment. These two cases examine the subsistence strategies of local people in facing ecological, economic, and social disasters, such as land degradation or deforestation, long drought, and the recent social and political troubles that Maluku was faced. Yeah. The strategy includes both traditional and new approaches. The existing strategies still provide for ecological and social resilience that reduce vulnerability. This case one, the example of K that talking about their response to land degradation. The case of K Islands show that the choice of a particular staple food that in this case cassava related and responded to the ecological situation of local environmental stress. The increasing importance of bitter cassava among the local people from the late 19th centuries onwards is strongly linked to a local ecology of dry and infertile soil that had followed a period of rapid environmental change. In the mid-19th century, the islands of K were covered with intact mature forests and abundant sago. You can see from one page of naturalist Welles that visit K in January 1857, state that in his book about the luxurious forests that produce magnificent timber, tall, straight, and durable, and they are very famous for the race of both builders. But this is the start of the losing of that luxurious forest. Oh, maybe I just do this. Yeah. If we see K nowadays, we can find that the landscape expose flat, dry field, the absence of significant tree cover, especially K kecil, that showing that you know, encouraging rapid moisture evaporation for soil deterioration. Yeah. Okay. Food storage in K at a time in the past can also be traced from folklore. So we can use a folklore for to learn about local ecological history. And this is the folklore about tabok, this leatherback tartar that every year make a migration from Papua to K. From the construction of the folklore, it shows that this is there was a crisis on land resources. So people went outside to Papua looking for food, and when brought back home food from the sea, the tartar and two species fish, bobara and wumur, I don't know the scientific name, sorry, and started to cultivate these marine resources. They also create in the folklore several species of fish. This concludes that the marine resources became important as a strategy choice for food security of a small island community in the response of land crisis. This period of deforestation and general ecology and climate modification saw the decline of sago and the expansion of cassava as staple food. Yeah. Due to the condition of a local soil, bitter cassava are more developed among the K Islander than the sweet cassava, because this is more resistance to the bad soil. Yeah. Although they also consume cassava. The local recognize the name of many folk variety of bitter and sweet cassava. When we work, during my research with Professor Ellen Dare, we found that we recorded in the book about 33 folk varieties of bitter cassava and sweet cassava, 16 for bitter cassava and 17 for sweet, including those that introduced from Ambon, that they call Kasbi Ambon and Kasbi Paso. So if you can see from this, we also measure their cyanide toxicity, and this is a vary between 20 to 800 ppm. During the contemporary social political crisis of Maluku conflict in 2000 till 2004, the K people also returned home from Ambon, and they brought home new variety of cassava from Ambon. So this is the adoption to reach the cassava. So actually cassava is not original from Maluku, but because of the climate or the environmental stress, we can see that the K people increasingly develop the food culture, a distinctive food culture based on the growing, processing, consumption of bitter cassava. Then this has become of a K Island identity in the wider regional context in Maluku. We say about Enbal, and people it will refer to K. So this is, you can see the processing, planting, processing, and selling of Enbal. Yeah, Enbal. Yeah. Okay, I don't know. It's my. I will try to make it shorter for the time. Yeah. The second case is a Buano. This is talking about the response of the people to dry period and communal unrest. I will highlight from the Buano case how traditional coping mechanisms were used in response to dry period between 1980 to 2003, and in the context of communal unrest 1999 to 2003 and 4, how the population displacement and breakdown of market linkages that resulted from the unrest. Okay, this is the ecological uncertainty that they facing. Drought year in this series of year, and we can found that this is also specific years of drought that has the same year when the world experienced the El Nino Southern Oscillation. So people in Buano find out every 10 years they will have wells almost to dry up. You can see we waiting for waiting for the water to come up, to have this, So there also sometimes this is epidemic, garden plants and trees dry up, poor harvest, even for cassava, because they also like K adopt cassava, but not bitter cassava. It's mostly sweet cassava to facing the dry season. But even if the bad dry season will make a harvest for cassava fail, late harvest and eaten by laor, then this is make it a fail. Now, what did they do for facing this dry period? When storage of local starch decreased because of poor harvest in the dry season, people of Buano look for starch supplies from outside the island to feed their increased population, because they are quite density, high density. The acquisition of sago flour is from Seram, especially from the area of Hormuz Peninsula. Now, this is a network of exchange between Buano and Seram has existed for a long time. So this is traditional network that they usually use when they got environmental stress. They also growing more varieties of cassava, but not as much as many as K. Last time I listed about 7 or 8 in one garden. So cassava is just not for household consumption, but also for the market. And you can see from the picture, this is the substitute of sagu kasbi, cassava, for baked sagu lempeng. So they even they still have sagu, but in the dry season it's very hard to harvest sagu because of lack of water. How about the impact of community unrest on Buano in 1999, 2003 that happened in all over Maluku? There are 2 main villages there that come from one source, but with a different religion, one Muslim and one Christian. So of course, they coming into the communal unrest and the relationship is a breakdown, the collapse of their integrated resource management practices, because usually if the wild pig as a pest come into the Muslim garden, they usually call the Christian kin to come to take it. But with the communal unrest, this is not work. anymore. On the other hand, Christian Bueno village, they leave their food garden, they move to other place in the island. Garden were abandoned, lack of access to garden, and of course to the market, because they're quite far from Seram. Income lost. Sego also, they cannot go for harvest, so it's just unharvest, because the Sego character is if you not harvest, then it will die. Wild pig overrun an abandoned garden. Invasion of wild pig in a Muslim garden increase. Cows harvest also fail. Cow become wild and become a main pest, while wild pig in the Christian side are become domesticated. Yeah. They have short-term coping strategy resulting from community conflict. For the Christian community, they receive a rise from government aid for the victim of unrest, and of course this is just a short-term coping strategies. They're also looking for the alternative exchange network in Seram to gain cash. They also using market forces by extracting Melaleuca oil in their own land, yeah, for outside market. So this is a form of short-term coping strategy that they go. So if we look just very fast to this, the cows, deforestation, we get dry season, wild pigs, social unrest, and we get effect, food shortage, embal become a staple food, fair harvest, and etc. that we discussed, we are talking before, and we also have some kind of a strategy, more folk varieties of cassava for only one name for scientific name, Melaleuca. No, not Melaleuca. What cassava is? Somebody can help. Esculenta. We just have one this something esculenta, but we have 33 folk variety of cassava. Yeah. So I will go to the pandemic disaster. What will the new normal bring? Even I'm not talking about this. For approximately 10 months during the COVID period, the Ambonese, this is because I cannot doing some work outside Ambon, so I did some observation in Ambon and see how people implement various short-term coping strategies to respond to their subsistence stress due to their economic problem, yeah, and response to the need for a healthy standard of living for human. People start to consume some, for example, calor for their health. People start to plant in their home yard garden, yeah. Also, they being introduced to the technique, to a hydroponic technique, yeah. That in fact moved them to the garden. When I asking people in the local villages in Ambon, mostly coronavirus only affect the economic impact for the cash. but not for the food security for household consumption. Pandemic also provide blessing for the environment, for example, by resting beach from visitors, even for at the expense of income from tourism. Now, after the disaster, one may ask, maybe people may return to old strategies or may continue new strategies or combine them, because in the history, people also combine the new and the old one. In fact, small island community have gone through series of new normal. That we are talking about the cassava in UK is a new normal. They pass new normal era within their history, as well as gone through a series of uncertainty. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ibu Irma.
Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Min. Okay, we will have the third speaker, and he is Alexio Leonito Amaral, MSc, from Timur Lorosai University. The topic of his presentation is Fisheries Household Empowering in the Era of New Normality in Timor-Leste. Before I give the time for Mr. Alexio for the presentation, I will read his short view. Alexio Leonito Amaral, MSc, is a Vice Director, Department of Fisheries and Marine Science Faculty of Agriculture, National University of Timur Lorosai, Dili, Timor-Leste. His experience as fisheries technician with the government of Indonesia in Dili, 1989 to 99, and then senior fisheries staff of Directorate General of Fisheries, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries Timor-Leste from 2005 and to 2012. National focal point for Coral Triangle Initiative on Coral Reef Fisheries and Food Security, Timor-Leste 2009 to 2012. And then as a national project team leader and finance manager for coastal and marine resources management for the Coral Triangle of the Pacific from 2012 to 2015, funded from Asian Development Bank. And from 2018 up to now, he is a lecturer and vice director for the Department of Fisheries and Marine Science Faculty of Agriculture, National University of Timor Lorosai, Dili, Timor-Leste. Mr. Alexio, you will have 20 minutes for the presentation. And I again remind all the participants to write it down your question on the question form that's already distributed by the technical staff. And don't forget to write it down the speakers that you address the question. So, Pa Alexio, the time is yours.
Yes, thank you, Ibu. Very good afternoon for you all. I guess this all of us afternoon now. I hope it is correct. Before I present or I share what I observed in Timor-Leste, firstly, I would like to thank and respect my magnificent rector of PATTIMURA. I was there for a few years ago. All presenters, researchers, distinguished participants. Yesterday I tried to run myself for my presentation, but there's some reason I cannot do that. So may I ask for the organizer to move my slide. Can we move to the second? Sorry for that. Hello. Just very short introduction regarding Timor-Leste and background. Why normality? This is the idea, and then empowerment, action, and target. The last, from my point of view, it is a lesson to learn for this area. Next. Well, yeah, sometimes we have to show in many presentations that where Timor-Leste located, sometimes like that. Well, we call that for the national administrative system, we call municipality. Before we call district, but a few years ago, system moved to adapted the system for the municipality. We have 30 municipalities in Timor-Leste, and 11 municipalities has the coastal zone or coastal territory, and two municipalities are landlocked municipalities. Based on our census in 2015, we are now reached 1.3 million inhabitants or citizens in Timor-Leste. But I don't have any data for 2020. Well, can move to next slide. Well, the background, why come up to the word of normality? It is some background that if no COVID-19, can we talk about normality? Sometimes this is the question. Well, unfortunately, we are now facing the global, what we call that the COVID-19 hit all the life of human beings in the world. When COVID-19, the pandemic appeared in all countries, what happened to our life? And like very effective to their job opportunity. Many of us lost of our job opportunity, and some other cannot find any job until now. Many company or institutions that employ people, they close their company, they close the institution because of COVID-19. If lost opportunity, what happened to the human being? What happened to us as a human for our life? Affected to food consumption. Who will really affected this COVID-19 because all activity paralyzed or stopped? Difficult to find job. If no job, difficult to find the economic for the family, and finally for the family consumption, like food consumption, very difficult. Like us, like Timor-Leste, as may you all know that we are, let's say, small country, half island. We divided like West Timor and East Timor, but we have also other small island. Our island are Atauro Island. May some of you already visited there. Very good place for tourists, for snorkeling and diving. Another island, Zaku Island, located in the eastern part of Timor-Leste, inhabitant island. Well, if this situation happened since probably last year, November, December, and come up with very effective since January, February until now. That's why this situation happened to all of us. What should be done? This situation already happened in this region or entire globe. For the next slide. Well, Why normalize? Now all of us, everybody talking about normalization, new normal area or new normality, the word of normal. If no pandemic, COVID-19 hit entire globe, if any normality, this is just come up with my idea, just question for me and for probably for all of us. Because of pandemic, as mentioned earlier as well, lost job opportunity. If no opportunity to do something or to find job, finally cause high unemployment. Well, example for example, like Timor-Leste, small country, or some other country, probably as well. If high unemployment, what really happened to the social life? What really happened to the household in a small family? Family income collapse because a family member, for example, in a family, more than 3, 4, or 5 family members, and one family member already get the job, but because of COVID-19, they have to lose the job. What happened to the family? Finally, this family very difficult or insecurity for the basic need. What I mean basic needs here, basic needs. First, how to eat, how to find food, and other basic need, daily need or regular need for the family. If happened to the family, very impacted to the national stability. This COVID also hit to the national economy and social life in entire country, in respective countries. Sometimes very difficult for the economy to run the economic activity in the country, and social life very confused for the social life in the country. When happened to the national instability, probably or may affect degraded to human being. What I mean this human being degraded is, for example, malnutrition may happen there, and if happen malnutrition, sometimes absolutely affected to the human health. Yeah, that's why now probably we use the word normalized or normality or new era in the normality system. Next. Here I would like to share may useful or may valuable for others. For example, action taken in Timor-Leste by our government. For example, first, financial support. Second, basic needs support, and the third, equipment support. Well, this is to mention that the real or concrete action taken by our government, as I mentioned on this slide. Can I move to the next? May sound figure lost, but what by mean financial support? Our government, the government of Timor-Leste, decided financial support for each and all household for the basic need for them. Here, last few months, our government decided to support our family, each family in Timor-Leste or based nationality family based in Timor-Leste. They have their right to get a financial support with the amount can cover for number of months. Well, it's not stopped to the household financial support, but government also try come up idea that support to the national private sector based in Timor-Leste. What by me national private sector is a national company that employ a number of employment in Timor-Leste. Because of COVID-19, so many national company or numbers of national company have been closed because they lost their financial company financial. That's why government decided to subsidize or to support company itself to recover the company financial. Then we hope that finally company can run again the company activity. If they run again the company activity, the idea that they can employ again workers, they already stopped them because of COVID-19 last few months. Well, sometimes a question here, we can have a question that can they run the company activity with or by support by the government? Well, let's see. I also try to find the result whether national company which already got support from our government, do they run the company activity and again employ the workers? This question also for me, and we'll probably get the answer for the next. This is what we call financial support from government for the new area, for the COVID area in Timor-Leste. Move to the next slide. Well, this is what we call basic needs support. Sometimes complicated, but it's done by our government because of our people. Government decided to support basic needs, but basic calculation for each person. First, the government identify each family member in each household for all municipalities. Well, and how to support or provide basic needs for the community? Government use their power, local authority, what we call here, like administrator of the municipality, down to the very low local authority are all village head or chief of village, what we call here sepisuku, like in Indonesia we call kepala desa or lura in lower level of administrative system. Well, chief of village, they identify each household and each household member, then report back to the local government, and local government continue to the national government, and national government through relevant institution or ministry, they provide the basic needs for each family member. Well, what shown in this picture that basic needs for government provided rice, eggs, and other vegetables and beans that member of family probably they can consume in a few weeks or few months later. So they can provide the opportunity to move forward for the next step with the support of a government. Well, but again, other question that do the government solve all the problem for the basic needs? Well, this is the basic question. How for the next, for example, now we are in December. How for the next year? Who know that COVID will end in the next year or will end with this year? By closing this year, 31st December, and then new year coming, a new era, it's meaning without COVID? This is just question. Just my observation for the COVID situation. Probably scientific, all researchers involved in this conference or presenters here can answer this question. When any scientific and laboratory analysis that COVID will end soon or already end. This is the question for how we can adapt for the next. Well, can move to third slide. Well, the topic is fisheries household empowering. That's why I put in the last slide, in the third action, concrete action. Government decided to specific support for the fisheries household, divided like for the fishing, for the fishermen, government provide a number of fishing gears, as shown in this picture. In Dili municipality, the government staff, director of district or municipality agriculture provide or support fishing gears to fishers. The idea that within COVID-19, fishermen difficult to go for fishing. Sometimes no COVID in the ocean, but how to go there because lockdown. Everybody or each of us cannot go out. But when they go out, also when they got their fish, the result or the product is difficult to sell in the market because of lost job opportunity, very paralyzed all economic activity. That's why for the capacity, for the buying capacity or market capacity, it is very low. Well, on the other hand, not only stop in the fishing gears, but like a fish farmer, we also introduced since 2 decades tilapia here. Well, inland aquaculture, we introduce and improve. That's why government provide some kind of materials for fish farmers, such as fingerling and fish food pellet. Because with the support, the idea, the government tentative that again reactivate the aquaculture activities for this time. We hope that the part of government support, our community, our fishermen, our fish farmers can use this opportunity. When they got the support, they can run again their activity. For example, fishermen can go to fish, and fish farmers can they grow again the fish. They activate the fish culture. So hopefully in the new year coming, in the new era, in the new year, we hope that they will recover all the activity and the life of the human become normal again. This is what we expected then. I hope that all of us in each country, each person try to find a way how to cope, overcome the situation in the new area because of COVID-19. Well, this is what I mentioned, that lesson learned in this area. Because of COVID-19, from my idea that psychologically influence to the people in the world, no matter wherever you are, whoever you are, they can have each other, for example, for healthcare. If may you know that like when COVID-19 hit Italy, the nation that may you very familiar with Italy, a physician or doctor from Cuba, they stated that we are ready to go there to support. That's meaning the psychological influence to the people, leave all the things behind, let's move together to handle, to support each other, because COVID-19. This is some, yeah, let's say, I remember Pak Luki mentioned that the threat become opportunity, or other presenter mentioned that this situation become lesson for the future. And the last one, let's say our government taken extraordinary decision and policy for economic normalization. That's why here in Timor-Leste, in particular, undergoing now and still ongoing, what we call the economic normalization for all activity, government try to facilitate, whether single person, family, community organization, and until civil society, as I mentioned earlier, like a national company, how they can run again their activity to normalize the economy. Normalization, all the situation. In this December, hopefully, we hope, hopefully, COVID-19, we can know that will end with this year. Well, I think this is what I observed in Timor-Leste, and again, thank you very much for my rector, for my lecturer, organizer, and presenter. Again, I have the honor and opportunity to share my idea, may useful or may not to others. And very last, thank you, obrigado, and dankjewel.
Thank you, Pak Alexio. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard very interesting topic and also presentation. And we get more knowledge that in all small islands, all the natural resources and the community, they can have opportunity to improve their life, and also how they face the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we are in a Q&A session. I have some questions for the speakers, and I will read those questions. So the first question for Mr. Nawamin. Mr. Nawamin, are you, Prof. Prashanant, are you there?
Yes, right.
Yes,
I'm here.
okay. So here is the question for you. How the government make sure that the community will have benefit from tourism, and also that they can preserve their culture? And the second question, how the COVID-19 influenced the tourism in Buriram, and how the community overcome that problem? Please.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your questions, right? For the first one, right? Actually, okay, this local community, okay, they set up their tourism by their own. Okay, they try to promote, okay, everything, okay, by themselves, and the government just support them, okay, to help them something. Okay, so when the tourists, okay, visit there, okay, they can buy the local products, okay, produced in this area, and then if they really want to try some local food, okay, the local food cooked by the local people. So just like the thing, okay, if they want the community to be sustainable, tourism community, they have to create by their own, okay, and then they can propose to the government, and the government can help them. Okay, this is very important. It's not originate from them, right? do not create by themselves, create by the government. We have the local people or local community have to create by their own the thing that they have to present to provide for the people or the tourists who want to visit them. The second one is about COVID-19 pandemic. Actually, Buriram is the first province that we use our policy. We closed actually last year, okay, when we heard about COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, the province, okay, by the ex member of parliaments, that he is very famous. Okay, Nevin Titop, right? He is the owner of the football stadium and car racing. We just closed, okay, the province by ourselves, right? And then after that, we have to check in, okay, and to check in, okay, with the program that we call Thai Tanah. It means Thai Victory software. Okay, so if the tourists want to go to Buriram, okay, they have to check in with the program there, and then if they go somewhere, we can check, okay, and then we can follow them. So I think it's not difficult for us to protect, okay, the COVID-19 right here. Okay, is it
Yes.
answers, right?
Yes, it is answered the question. So the next question goes to the second speakers, Ibu Min. Yeah, Prof. Min, you have done the research for quite a long time and to investigate how the local community survive with their own natural resources. As now we are facing the climate change or global warming, so how the community do to make sure that the natural resources can be used and also can be sustained for the future generation. Please, Prof. Min.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Irma. Yeah, the community, especially that live in a small island, they have ongoing adaptation toward the changing of their environment. People note about climate change that cause their schedule, yeah, toward their fishing or their agriculture activity being disturbed. They know about that, and they learning about how the climate change causing this, and this will take time. They will have a short-term strategy, and when they found that this is fit, and they will have this. We learn from K, for example. We know that from the story we found through folklore. Folklore is a very important to learn about examination of traditional knowledge, yeah, oral history, tradition. Also, we can find a result of experiences and interpretation of experience through folklore. So when we study K, we know that people make adaptation. People adapt to a very very big changing, and they found in this case they found a new staple food that can that secure them from this disaster. Yeah, some strategy may fail, but some may succeed, and some even reach harmonization with the new changing, but some maybe not compatible at all. And we can find if they're not compatible, we can see the deterioration or deforestation or so on, that in the expense of the environment situation. Yeah, so people do in their culture. Their culture, they have a process of learning. Learning about the changing that happen, change that happen, and in Maluku we have what we call it a system of nanaku. So they nanaku the change, yeah, and they learn about it, and they will found the new strategy for this, yeah. Yeah, so you can see. So why I putting the story about K, because cassava it's not original, even for Maluku in Indonesia. But K make it, put it in their culture and make it a distinct identity for themselves. Yeah. For Indonesia, we say enbal, and people will refer to K, very distinctive culture. Yeah, so this is Ibu Irma.
Thank you, Ibu Min. The second question. For the food security, do you think that the traditional food that is consumed by the local community, they are still the same, or now it seems like they start to change because of the availability of these resources in the small islands?
Yes, right. If we when we do some research in village, people we found not all people, yeah, but we found that they put a status for certain food, and that there is a high status and low status, depend on the development that putting them in the modern world. For example, maybe people will think that food from a factory, for example, instant noodle, it's higher in status than sago. So they put sago in the status of traditional outback, yeah. So if you go to the village, they will see that people from outside. Okay, we will serve them with instant noodle with rice. Even they have cassava and so on. So people put the status, and the status it's very attached to this capitalism, yeah, to the economic development, economic market. So this is that happened. but we found that some people not sending out their traditional food, because when we're talking about food in the culture, this is something that you eat in the early time. So even for example, you going to outside, you still looking for rice. For example, for Indonesian, you're looking for rice. You cannot eat bread for every day. Yeah. So some people also cannot put aside sago. This is talking about how people think about the food. Is it satisfied them? So because it's not just we're talking about we feel full, but can it satisfy us? Even we eat a bread in one pack, but we say that we still don't have it because we don't have rice, for example. So sago in my research, I found out that even it's become inferior now, but people still have it. In K, if you go to the market in K, you can still find people selling sago. Sagu manta, yeah. And from the experience of Buano, as sago interaction interaction between Buano and Seram for sago, it's still going on. If you remember Ambon, when we have crisis, we have economic crisis, people start to look for sago, yeah, to put inside home as an emergency food. So it's not a staple food, but it's changed to be emergency food. So the status is become changed, yeah. So we should aware about what they call it, mempertahankan our food, because sago, for example, it's very dealing with small island. Yeah, why the ancestor choosing sago? Because this is a very matching, yeah, with a small island environment. So if you lose sago, you maybe lose one small island. Yeah, so this is should be careful in our culture, because I repeat again, culture is about how people learn something. This is the process of learning. Yeah, so this is Ibu Irma.
Thank you, Prof. Min.
Yeah.
So the next question, it goes to Mr. Alexio.
Yes, please.
What type of household fisheries are mostly developed in Timor-Leste? Yeah, and the second question, I think you already mentioned, but I still read this one. What is the East Timor government policy in community empowerment in the field of aquaculture?
Well, thank you for the question. What I mentioned, the household here, very characteristic in the fishing activity. One of our island, what we call Atauru Island. In Timor-Leste, in Atauru Island, they are, can we call them full-time fishermen? The reason why government in this new era try to find a way, because COVID-19 hit all the activity paralyzed. That's why government decided to support fishing girls for them, and all fishers in all municipalities that spread out fishermen in the coastal area. First, they try to collect information or report from a local authority, what we call local authority. As I mentioned, that the chief of village, they report that this situation, this household, number of household, they engage in fishing activity. That's why they are the priority to get the support. Well, move to the aquaculture. This aquaculture as well, government identified first in which village, in which municipality, more community or most household members engage in the aquaculture activity, and then they receive the report from the local authority in cooperation with other components, and finally they identify what do they really need for the aquaculture activity. That's why first government identify, as I mentioned earlier, that fingerling, fish fingerling, they identify first the technician came to their side. They have to know first the pond, how many square meters, so that technically can be decided that how many fingerlings the government should provide to them. And then following that, because of this situation, government also try to solve how they can feed their fish. That's why government try initially provide food or fish pellet to them. That's why I also mentioned that hopefully with this situation, our community can again run the activity to support household income generation for next coming or in the future. I think this is the reason why our government try to decide or don't make the decision to support the community. I think this more or less try to comment what raised the question. Thank you, Ibu. Back to you.
The last question, Pak Alexio. You are talking about the era of new normality, and on the other side, we also have the global warming phenomena. So as we are all living in the small islands, Timor-Leste and also Maluku. So what do you think about the fisher community face those two different things at the same time?
Well, thank you. If Pak Luki is still there, hi Pak Luki. I also have an idea when Pak Luki presented related climate change to pandemic. If may I have another question, whether any correlation or linkages between climate change and pandemic. If scientists can find out this situation, probably in the future we can find out the solution, whether global warming or sea level rising or climate change really correlate to the pandemic or any other history of pandemic, probably, if we can know that. But why the reason why I mentioned the new era and new normality. If nothing happened, probably we cannot say any other normality, because any other abnormal or uncertainty or unsecure situation. That's why all of us in entire globe mention what we call new normality. That's why may I ask the scientists that can we find any correlation between climate change or whatever global warming, as Ibu mentioned, correlated to this COVID-19 pandemic or any other natural phenomena can be happen in the future? I think this is my idea, Ibu. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Pak Alexio. So that is other question that is addressed to all the scientists who are attending this seminar today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have had very interesting discussion from those three speakers. and we have some idea how people are faced this new era. I just follow the era of new normality. And as we are living in the small islands, I think we all have a very rich natural resources, and if we can use in a very good way by applying the local wisdom, so then we are not really afraid of all those things that we are facing now. So we do hope that we can face the time, the era that we can see each other, not through this virtual meeting, but we can meet all the partners from Buriram University, from Timur Lorosai University, and also from other university in Japan, in Australia, and also in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big applause for those three speakers. And then we come to an end of this session. I give it back to the moderator. Thank you very much, and have a lovely weekend to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Irma. Ladies and gentlemen, just like what Ibu Irma already said, we had followed all interesting plenary sessions, and now we will be in the last session of this conference. In this last session, we are going to have 4 parallel sessions. All the participants will be divided in 4 different groups in 4 different meetings. For the first group, we will have a discussion about marine natural resources of small islands with the moderator, Dr. Jesaya Patikawa, MSc. In the second group, we will have a discussion about fisheries processing technology with Dr. Maureen Patinasarani, Master of Applied Science, as a moderator. The third group, we will have a discussion about socio-economic properties of small islands community with the moderator, Insinyur Grace Hutubesi, MSc. And the last group, group 4, we will have a discussion about sustainable mariculture in small island with the moderator, Dr. Seli Patipeluhu, MSc. Ladies and gentlemen, the technical staff will put the participants and also the presenters in different Zoom breakout rooms based on the discussion topic. So please be patient when this process is on progress. It takes about 5 minutes for all participants to be placed into the breakout room. Thank you and enjoy the parallel session.
PowerPoint-nya sudah di sini.
Sekolah